The title of my topic is, You Landed Where? And the reason I'm doing this is that in past years we've talked about off-field landings, field selection, decision heights, and so forth. And we've covered that almost every year, and we all felt that the planning team that we needed something about retrieves. And so this is going to be a brief presentation about how to set up a retrieve, because if you're going to be flying cross-country, there's at least a chance you may land at another airport, ideally, airstrip. You still need a retrieve, or land in a field. So in a way, my talk is not differentiated airport versus farmer's field. It's just about how to plan a retrieve so that at the end of your flight, you can know that you've done everything you can to make sure that that retrieve goes well. So, are you ready for a retrieve? And this photo shows somebody who's not quite ready for a retrieve. Got a little go-kart on the front of the trailer. And by the way, any of the illustrations that you see that you think are really good, they all came from Vicki Chenard. I kind of put together the facts and figures, and she makes it look good. So I thank her for that. So the way I figure it, there are 7 components to planning a retrieve. And we're going to talk about those. 1, pilot. Okay, that's pilot's part of the retrieve. Glider, yes. Trailer, yes. Retrieve crew, you got to have somebody drive your vehicle. Retrieve vehicle. Retrieve gear. Retrieve plan. And part of as I'm thinking about doing this talk, I thought of all the mistakes I've made over the years about not covering every one of these things, and that's why they're on my list today. I've learned from my experience, I guess you might say my errors. So we'll talk about one at a time.
Some of us have learned from your errors as well.
That's right. And I admit I am very fallible and imperfect. So for the pilot, we've talked about you have to have the cross-country soaring and off-field landing skills, bronze badge. You have to be knowledgeable and ideally experienced in disassembly and trailering. Like Nick got the introduction to that for the junior. He's ready to go cross-country now. He's got his bronze badge, but there's still some more things, Nick. You have to be responsible for organizing the retrieve plan. You are it in the preparation of the trailer and the gear. It's not a bad idea to have some cash in your wallet for when you land out and you have to wait for 5 or 6 hours for your crew to show up. You may want to go to the local establishment, or you might have to pay off the farmer. I got $100 extorted from me once. Cell phone. You got to be able to communicate with your retrieve crew. And not a bad idea if you can have an extra battery, because sometimes if you forget to turn it to airplane mode or something, it's going to chew up the battery by the time you get on the ground. And suitable footwear and clothing. Why do you suppose you might need footwear?
Walking.
Leon, how far did we have to walk after we landed down in Illinois?
About 10 feet.
No, I mean into town. Into town. We walked.
Miles.
Yeah, we walk quite a distance, and if you're flying out in rugged territory, you need to make sure you have footwear that can handle the territory. So some of these things are kind of obvious, but you got to think through all these things.
Yeah, last year when Dave Nadler had his incident in his Arcus, the Air Force Academy pilot who was behind him walked 3.5 hours in mountainous terrain to get help.
And that's another point. That's a very good point. Some of this stuff depends on where in the world you're flying and what you might run into. Around Minnesota, it's not quite like flying out in Utah. So for the glider, you want to make sure you have your insurance document with you so you can show the person whose field you landed in and destroyed part of the crop, I've got coverage for this. Okay? I like to carry a rope with me in the glider. It's got a ring on it so I can hook up. The farmer can bring out his little four-wheeler and pull me out of his field, or if it's a 10,000-foot runway, we can hook up a rope to the glider and not have to push it that far. Off-field landing kit. I carry just a little nylon zipper bag, and I've got quite a bit of stuff in there. I was thinking of bringing that along and show you what I keep in it, but whatever you think you want to have, and we can cover that some other time, but it doesn't have to be huge, but you need to have certain essentials with you. I like to have a compass. I like to have a windbreaker, I've got a little emergency kit that has a fire starter in it and so forth, a whistle, a mirror and so forth. Stuff that you want to have if you're out in the middle of nowhere and maybe not near a road or whatever. So you need to have that in the glider. Spot or InReach, that's an electronic device, a satellite device that will send a signal, and you can communicate with your retrieve crew. You can call for an emergency. And the InReach, Paul, if I'm not mistaken, you can send messages back and forth, brief messages. But those sometimes, well, they're highly recommended for competitions, but I think even if you're flying cross country anywhere, it's not a bad idea to have that.
It would have helped us a lot if Stefan had one of those. We could have come in here and said, where the hell is that boy?
Yeah, yeah. Survival gear. Again, that depends on where in the world you're flying. I like to have extra water on board, especially in dry places like Utah. So I have plenty of water on board. Clothing, survival kit. Trailer. So tires properly inflated. I mean, you don't want to ask your crew to pull your trailer and they get it ready to go and you're already off in the air someplace. The tires aren't properly inflated, and then you better make sure your spare's okay. Cause probably in the last 3 years we've had 3 flat tires on our trailer.
Wheel bearings.
Wheel bearings. The Cobra trailer wheel bearings are sealed, I believe.
The Comets aren't, Homemades aren't.
Very good. Thank you. So make sure those are ready. The 21 bearings are that trailer. Those need to be cleaned and lubricated. Ask me how I know. Make sure the lights are working. By golly, if you're doing a retrieve, it might be after sunset, and your trailer lights better work. And boy, those trailer lights are sneaky. You might check them, 3 weeks ago, and then you come to use it the next time, they don't work. Those trailer lights, they're unpredictable, unreliable. Trailer license. Appropriate tools to change a flat tire. Dan Zimmerman has learned how to use the jack from the car to change a flat tire on our DG trailer. But there was a hydraulic jack in the trailer that he didn't know about, and that was my mistake. I didn't brief him on that. But you have the appropriate lug wrench and so forth. Very frustrating not to have the gear. Hooked up, ready to go. Everything is all set. I mean, this is the ideal. Or your crew is willing to do it if needed. So sometimes if you've got a crew that's experienced, they've flown with you or whatever, they've trailered for you before or whatever, they know what they're doing, you can say, yep, Lou, I'll hook up your trailer for you, go fly, or Lou has done that for me. Standing by. So a retrieve crew. You need somebody who's experienced and comfortable driving with the trailer. You don't want to just grab any old person and say, hey, drive my car. And you want someone to ride shotgun. Now, this person that's riding shotgun is available for any of you who would like to have them help out.
Right turn, Clyde.
And you need to have some knowledge of what in the world is the pilot planning to do. Where are they going? How far they're going to go? You need to have some idea where they're going. When to leave the field. Is the retrieve crew supposed to leave the field before you take off? We've done that sometimes when we're planning a long downwind dash. Get the crew on the road ASAP. They have to have the tail dolly, so they can't leave until you're kind of on the line, ready to go and no longer need the tail dolly. But get them started because very likely the glider will get ahead of the car. Overnight bag if indicated. Boy, there have been times when we've disassembled in the dark and it's getting close to midnight, and by golly, maybe it makes more sense to find a place to sleep instead of driving through the night. It can happen. Crew instructions from the pilot, and I'll show you some crew instructions. Lou has a 2-page crew instruction that's very complete. I use a shorter form, probably could be better, but you should have your own crew instructions that you customize and have available. I think it's not a bad idea to have it laminated. You can put it on the dashboard or whatever, so the crew knows exactly what you expect. Oh, here's Lou's crew checklist. I don't expect you to read it, but I want There's lots to it. It's very thorough. Here's page 2. And I'm sure he'd be happy to share that with you if you'd like.
Yeah, it hangs in a, I put it in a little blue folder, and it hangs on my trailer. So if anybody has to come and get me, if you go to my trailer and go, what's this? And it's a book that says, come and get me.
That's right. Yeah.
Is that bars too?
What's it so?
Yeah. And here's my checklist. And I have this laminated, and I have 2 different parts to it. My responsibilities as the pilot. Here's what I will do. That reminds me that I need to have everything ready to go, and then what the crew needs to do. And in the actual printed list I use, some of these are highlighted in red, like bring tail dolly. It is, for the DG, it's very hard to move that glider around on the ground without a tail dolly. Sometimes we've had to do that. But you need a retrieve vehicle. This is brief. Make sure you leave the keys. It's hard to drive your retrieve vehicle if you don't leave the keys. And make sure they know how to drive your car, how to start it. Some of these newer cars are a little more complicated, or for some of us. Has anybody ever taken off with the car keys in their pocket in the glider pilot? Oh, yeah.
I've seen it done here at this airfield years ago,
Yeah?
and the pilot circling was, just prior to departure, was alerted, we don't have your keys. So I said, well, I'll drop them, keep an eye out. I'm not taking this out. And the only thing I could radio back was, no joy. Yeah.
Then what do you do, huh?
You don't do a whole lot.
That's all right.
Home or the bar. Yeah. So you're right, yeah, leave the friggin' keys.
Yeah. And one other detail about that would be also leave a key for the trailer hatches or doors. Make sure they can unlock it if necessary.
Charlie Spratt had a great story about that whole takeoff.
Go ahead.
Too, that where he said the pilot, same thing, took off, had the keys in his pocket, said, I tell you what, I'll put them in the pocket and I'll button the pocket on my windbreaker and I'll throw the windbreaker out so then you can see that and the key should make it fall down. But it caught a thermal in it.
Oh, yeah.
If I could ask.
Yeah, please do.
This gas tank full, I'm a big proponent of that. I do not come to the field with my retrieve vehicle having less than half a tank, and I've got about 300 miles on a half a tank, 250. Simply because it's so much easier to fill up with gas before you put a 30-foot trailer on the back.
Yeah, oh, yes, yeah. Another thought is make sure there's some cash available for the crew, your retrieve crew, so that they need to get more gas on the way, they can do that without their expense. I think I've got that on here, but if I don't, I'll mention it. Road maps. Good idea to have road maps. Aviation maps, I know we've done that. I consider that more or less optional, but sometimes it's not a bad idea for the person who's driving your retrieve vehicle to have an aviation map to see where the airports are and so forth. Money for gas. Okay, so I did have that on my list. Make sure that appropriate trailer hitch. By golly, try and put the 1 7/8 trailer from the trailer part onto a 2-inch ball. That's not going to work. So make sure you got the right trailer hitch. GPS is nice to have because sometimes the pilot will give you GPS coordinates. How the hell are you going to find them? You can use your GPS in the retrieve vehicle to find the pilot.
Point of order?
Yeah.
If you have a standalone GPS, which I do, you need to get instruction. You have to have instructions on how to enter GPS coordinates for your retrieve driver, so they know what to do with those.
That's a good point. Excellent, because
Because each GPS is a little
yeah,
quirky and
each unit's different. You bet. And then snacks, food, fluids. I like to have a little cooler in the car with some soda, water, whatever. Chocolate chip cookies. That's one way to kind of entice a volunteer to be your retrieve crew. Not a bad idea. Some chips, whatever. And of course, they can stop and pick up stuff. But retrieve gear. Assembly and disassembly toolkit. That's important. A few years ago, actually many years ago, Chris Cooper and I did a downwind dash, probably, I don't remember, 150 miles away or whatever. And somebody didn't have the appropriate toolkit along for the 21. We were in the 21 at that time. But I had previously purchased metric screws that fit the holes in the rear spar pins or whatever, so we were able to get them out. But otherwise, it could have been a very long day. Checklist, assembly and disassembly checklist. Tail dolly, very important for some gliders. Wing stand or wing stands. Rigging dolly, for the DG, we have a wing dolly to support the weight, and it's very maneuverable and so forth. Without that, it's a 200-pound wing, and that's a real pain. So that has to be in the trailer. Wing wheel, that's optional. The tow-up bar is optional, but if you're going to land someplace where you have to pull the glider a long distance or whatever, it's nice to have. General toolbox. Have any of you seen Stefan Nesser's vehicle when he's he's got everything? So inevitably, no matter how much stuff you have, you may not have what you need. So bring whatever you feel you want to have. They're very important. Headlamps. They're much better than a flashlight for disassembly in the dark, because then both hands are free. So when you're working with your pins and your safeties or whatever you're doing, a headlamp works great. So I carry one in my Landau kit, and I also have one in the car. Okay, and a retrieve plan. Communication plan, contact information, backup plan. It's important you have an ironclad communication plan, because that's so critical in relocating. So in Vicky's photo here, you'll see that she has the top-notch latest device with the tin cans and the string. But it also, there's also the long-distance version with the longer string, so you can really communicate. And when to leave the field, we already mentioned that. Wait for the phone call, go start now, start a little bit later, whatever. You need, the retrieve plan needs to include that. Have you thought about arranging, or where are you going? make sure the crew knows where the pilot's going. Have you thought about arranging for a possible aerial retrieve? Have a tow plane come and get you. We've done that. You can talk to the FOO and the tow pilot, make sure, hey, I'm going to go out this direction. If I land at this airport, would you be willing to come and get me? Yeah, not a bad idea to think about that ahead of time. Yeah,
On the previous point,
yeah.
some folks at Faribault have had some unpleasant experiences with aero retrieves. They had never actually done a level tow,
Yeah.
only a climbing tow.
Yes.
Some gliders are not very happy in level cross-country tows, particularly those gliders with belly tow hooks.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're going to do an aerial retrieve, I suggest that you practice, if you haven't already, a level tow at altitude sometime to see what dynamics you may discover in your glider. And you are one of the gentlemen who discovered interesting dynamics in
Yeah,
aero
if you go
tows.
faster than the level flight, you overrun the control plane. But
Yeah.
then I didn't know I should just pop the spoilers a little bit and would have given me enough drag. But, as Don says, now you've got to stick way back because it wants to drop the nose when you got, so, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
interesting. As long as you're climbing, you're fine.
Yes. Some gliders fly very nicely in low tow position for
For
a,
cross-country, I strongly recommend
Yeah.
level position.
I don't know
It's on
how,
nose hook.
yeah.
You can't do it on the belly.
That's what I said. The reason I said some of that, I figured with a CG hook.
Practice it first.
Yeah.
If you're going to count on it for a 50-mile retrieve, practice it near your local airport.
Amen. Vicki, did you have something?
No, I just was saying the Junior is currently, got air brakes that are unhappy. Yeah,
I can help you. They discovered an anomaly on the flight line. Doesn't look like anything serious. Looks like gummed up lubrication. So
Oh,
they pulled it back in. I think they're pulling wings over by the glider hangar to get a look at it. It may well be available here in an hour. So
great, great.
stand by. Yeah.
Okay.
Bob, what's the effect of low tow on, versus level flight behind?
Yeah. Okay. So can you guys all see? If this is and I've done both ends of this. I've done hundreds of miles across country towing in the tow plane and in the glider behind me. When you're climbing, you're above the wake of the tow plane. When you level off, you're right in it. If you go above it and then you lose sight of the tow plane, you now accelerate if you're a clean glider towards the tow plane. So if you're below the wake, you can now A, see the tow plane, B, you're not disturbed by the wake, it's over your head, and everything is happy. If you have a nose hook on the glider.
has no impact on overrunning the glider.
No, on the contrary, for you to catch up to the tow plane now, the only way you could do it would be to pull up, which puts more tension on the tow line, which slows you down, actually, slows him down too. Okay, so you don't have the problem of overtaking the tow plane, which any glider 31 and better will do.
So from what you're saying, a low tow and level flight would be a little bit higher than a low tow and climbing flight?
A low tow and level flight would be a little bit higher than what in?
Were you
flight?
saying the wake would be higher?
Yes,
And in
the
low
weight
tow,
will
you
not
go
be
below the
flected
wake.
downwards, it will be essentially
So-
just a slight downward.
Yeah.
So
So you
you
could
won't
take
have
up
to
a
be far
position,
below
right.
to be below it.
Ah,
You have a very nice view of the tow plane and everything that's going on.
Good point, Nick.
Practice it, maybe we should add this to cross-country camp in the future.
Not a bad idea.
You asked me about ideas, here's one that
Yeah.
most people don't know.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the rate is, but the rate on Aerotows from the club tow plane is a bargain.
Yeah.
It's 125 tack
It's a
out.
bargain.
I thought you said garbage, it's
No,
a bargain.
a bargain,
Quite contrary.
yes,
Thank you.
yes.
100 or 125.
Wait a minute, yeah.
So if you're up in high tow, in tow behind the tow plane, are you essentially drafting? Is that why you're gonna catch up?
I don't know what drafting means in that scenario.
No, you don't even have to, you can be off, I was way off on the side, over on this side, and still catching up with it. They're just slipperier, they just.
What I was thinking is with bicyclists. You
Okay,
get
I know
one
drafting
behind the
is in
other,
trucks and
drafting.
bikes, yeah,
Yeah.
but there's no drafting going on here. If anything, the tow plane should be drafting the glider. Because the tow plane's the dog. But no, it's essentially that if you get above the tow plane in any clean glider, and you want to be able to see the tow plane, you're going to put the nose down, and you're going to see the rudder
Yeah.
right about here. But this, we ought to really do this. People should see for themselves.
Yeah.
So let's add that to the camp next. I recommend that you add that to the camp.
Great.
next year.
Brian?
Yeah. I think it's very important if you do have an aero tow retrieve, is to coordinate with the pilot of the tow plane. And I've towed a number of gliders out from remote fields, and what I always tell the pilot, the glider pilot, is I'm going to take you up and I'm going to initiate a very slow climb. And I'll climb out, depending on the distance, I'll maintain a very slow rate of climb just to keep the tow line tight and so that the pilot, glider pilot can always see me and he's always under tension.
I see. Yeah.
I think it's important to do that.
From the tow pilot
And I
point of view.
remember pulling you out of Red Wing.
I've been pulled out of a lot of places. All right. Any other comments about that? So lastly, are you ready for a retrieve? One of the things I mentioned to somebody yesterday, allow plenty of time before takeoff to prepare for a possible retrieve. This stuff takes time. And so the more you can do, it takes longer than you think to have everything ready. And have as much done ahead of time as you can. Because if you're playing an ambitious task, Leon was just telling us, start early, get up in the sky and be ready, get airborne as soon as you know you can stay up. And so you're under time pressure to get all this done. Boy, that's when mistakes happen. So allow plenty of time. Get here early, do as much ahead of time as you can, and delegate as much as you can so you can focus on preparing for your flight. Okay? And use checklists. They help prevent omissions and errors. And create your own crew instructions. Okay, make sure you have that done. That'll be helpful.
Question?
Yeah.
Hey, Vicky, what does the picture signify?
A couple of those people that are on the organizing committee called me one day from the air and said, could you maybe hook up the trailer and meet us in Osceola?
I have no idea who that could be. Lou, do you know?
Well, let's just say maybe all of those things weren't ready ahead of time.
Like I said at the beginning, most of what this presentation is about is from the errors that I've made. So I'm hoping to help save some of you some grief.
As a potential retrieve crew, I'm worried about not being able to get into the airport that you landed at.
Uh-huh.
So if you land at an airport and it's all locked up, would you please do your best to try to figure out how the car and trailer are gonna get in?
Amen.
Because it helps a lot,
Amen, yeah.
have instructions.
Some of them are locked up. Okay, I think that's it.
And the AirNav, I don't know, I'm sure everybody else knows this. AirNav, if you look it up online, includes the telephone number for the airport director.
Yeah,
Airport manager.
airport manager, yep.
So if you can't figure it out any other way, look it up and,
I think it also has the latitude and longitude in there.
Very good point.
yeah.
Yeah, very good.
And
Yes?
if there's a keypad at the airport, try two things. First, try the airport elevation.
Yep.
And second, try 121.5, 1215.
Or a lot of them have the Unicom frequency.
Yeah.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah,
Or some of them, it's written on the top of the glare shield or, or just a sticker on there.
Along that line, Ron McLaughlin, 3 years ago, asked Jim Hansen, the airport manager at Albert Lea Municipal Airport, Jim, what's the frequency to get into the keypad? And Hansen said it's the emergency frequency, and Ron says 830.
Lovely.
Sometimes it's still 1, 2, 3, 4. Like it was at Faribault for a while.
All right, we're going to take a short break, about a 10-minute break, and then we'll finish off with our last presentation.